The final part of the lecture includes how to use your words to do two very, I would say, uncomfortable or challenging things in interpersonal communication relationships, and that is how to be assertive and how to apologize, which sometimes is very difficult to do. So let's start with the apology. How to apologize with your words. Like I said, this can be something that is very uncomfortable. It doesn't come naturally to a lot of us, but it's an important part of an interpersonal relationship. If you can't learn to apologize for your actions or the words that come out of your mouth, you probably won't have very many long-lasting interpersonal relationships. So how do we apologize well with our words? The first thing that we do is that we are honest with ourselves. We realize that maybe something we said needs to be adjusted. Maybe you said something that the interpretation or the perception of it was incorrect. Be honest with yourself. Think about it from an other-oriented perspective. Think about the person that heard the information. Think about their lived experiences and how they may be perceiving the information. Not just necessarily how you intended to say it, but how they might be perceiving it. That will help you, first of all, become other-oriented, but also will help you realize how your messages might have been misunderstood or misinterpreted. The third one is that you are sincere. You are sincere in the words that you are saying. You are sincere in the fact that you would like to make an apology for your actions or your behavior or the words that you said. Let them know that you are sincere. Be explicit in your apology and give additional information. I'm sorry, and that's all you say, isn't necessarily helpful when you're trying to be sincere and get to a level of empathy. So the alternative to that would be something like, I'm sorry I hurt you, I was wrong. That is getting a little more specific, a little more explicit in what you're trying to say so that they understand the I hurt you part is saying I hurt you, meaning I did something to you that caused you to be upset. And then I was wrong shows them that you were not correct in your behavior, right? So that shows a little bit of a better level of empathy that way. I often talk about the I'm sorry, but in this lecture. So apologies that begin with I'm sorry, but are not necessarily apologies. So it's important for you in your interpersonal relationships because you don't want to use those phrases, but you also want to make sure that you're not receiving those phrases from other people when they are trying to apologize. So what I mean by that is, I'm sorry, but is like saying, I'm sorry, but let me make excuses for my behavior, rather than I'm sorry that I acted like that. I'm sorry that I was wrong. Anything that comes after the but in I'm sorry, but is going to be information that is not going to be helpful for your interpersonal relationships. The last one is understanding the value of time, and that is understanding the fact that you have a certain window in which you need to apologize for it to be effective. Those are almost immediately after, and the term immediately doesn't mean 5 seconds after something happened. What you in your social circles and in your relationships deem immediately. So immediately might be the next day. Immediately might be the next few days afterwards. Immediately is not the next time you happen to come across somebody or 6 months after or anything like that. Understand that the longer you go without an apology, the less effective your apology will be because it comes across as not being genuine and sincere or honest in a way because you let it go on that long. If you know about it, right? That's the important key to verbal communication apologies is that if you are unaware that something you did needs an apology, that's different than understanding that apologies need to happen and you just not doing them, right? The next one is to be assertive, and that is that you want to make sure that you are using your words to effectively describe, effectively disclose, and effectively identify with things that are important to you. And what that means is that you use your words to promote description, to promote explanation, to promote detail-oriented, effective verbal communication. That your level of disclosure is appropriate with your words, right? We talked about the fact that the more you disclose to somebody, the more open you are. Think about that window we talked about at the beginning of the semester. The more appropriate you disclose, the more intimate your relationships become. And then, obviously the goal is to get to the core of somebody, to have the highest level of self-disclosure. It means you have some of the most intimate relationships. Identifying when your words are going to be used appropriately and then using them effectively are some of the most assertive ways that you can be a good verbal communicator. Being silent when appropriate is also another very assertive way in which you can use verbal communication. And that kind of sounds like counterproductive there, but being silent when it's appropriate and when it is needed is just as effective than trying to use your words. So screaming over somebody, using words to insult somebody rather than just listening to what the person has to say to you is more effective than doing the opposite, which is, screaming over somebody and yelling absurdities or expletives or things that are only going to make things worse, rather than being silent, being respectful, listening when you have to listen to other people's verbal communication, and then give back your good descriptive self-disclosure and identifying words back when appropriate. And the last one is paraphrasing. They talk about the fact that assertive, good verbal communication, when you paraphrase correctly and appropriately, actually shows a level of understanding to the person that you are communicating with. So paraphrasing is an excellent way to have good, strong verbal communication. Remember, we also use paraphrasing in empathetic communication, right? Because we paraphrase how somebody feels. We give back to them the emotion that they show to us to show them that we understand the feeling level of the situation they're going through or the information that they're sharing with us. So the final part of verbal communication that I want to go over with you is actually have you watch a video that is a kind of compilation of a whole bunch of different popular clips from different shows and movies. So it's like a 3.5-minute clip, I believe, that goes over just little clips, like 45 seconds to a minute of different shows. Big Bang Theory is in there, Friends, a couple different movies are in there, Good Will Hunting, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to think of some other clips that are in there. So I think it's like 5 or 6 different areas. So here's the web address. If you want to try to write that down, you don't have to. I'm actually going to put in a part 4, which will be just a direct link to this YouTube video so you can watch it. While you're watching it, I want you to be able to identify different areas where you see verbal communication. So think about things you want to think about. Where do you see strong verbal communication, right? That's the key here. Can you easily identify strong verbal communication? Do you see when it's being used incorrectly, when they are unnecessarily communicating when it's not appropriate, or when it is necessary for them to slow down a little bit, right? Kind of like my typing right now. Used incorrectly, right? Or when is it being used correctly? When do you see very strong, good communication, right? And then show the opposite of it. So those are the things I want you to pay attention to. Think about the barriers that we talked about at the very beginning of the semester, or very beginning of this lecture. We talked about this idea that there are denotative and connotative, there is concrete and abstract, and then there are different ways in which we can misunderstand people, right? And you will notice those misunderstandings in this video that we have. All right, that is Chapter 6, Verbal Communication. Thank you so much for listening. I will have the slides posted separately. And of course, if you have any questions at all after you're done watching this YouTube video, make sure you let me know. And again, I'm so sorry we cannot be face-to-face in class.